Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning into another episode of Thank You for Your Reply. Um, Today, we are joined by Brian Pate, the broker owner of Pate Realty in North Carolina. Thanks for coming on, Brian.
I appreciate it, man. Glad to be here.
Before we start off, before I jump into the questions, can you just tell a little bit about about your realty company and how you got your start and everything?
Sure. I was born a small child in Tallahassee, Florida. No, just kidding. I got my license. I made my first investment purchase of real estate in 1993. Got my license in 1993, and I was in the DJ business prior to that. I was on radio and did nightclubs and private parties and things like that. So I was doing a lot of different things at the time. Got my real estate license in 93 because I saw people making money that I was shocked that they could make money in the business. And so started doing that. Couple of folks at the company that I was with at the time, Fonville Morrissey, identified me. Sharon Pelt, who was my mentor there, and Peter McGarry, who was kind of my coach all through that. They said, "Hey, you'd be great in the classroom with your experience." I was like, "Okay, I'll try it." And it worked well. I did that, just selling real estate, DJing on the side, and did that for a while. Became a manager in the early 2000s. Built an office from 31 agents and $87 million worth of production to 125 agents, $375 million worth of production. They took me down to the corporate office to rewrite the new agent training program. I did that. They moved me into a management seat up in Youngsville, North Carolina, and I did that for a while. And then had a crossroads in 2012, decided I was going to get back into sales because I'd seen all the mistakes that agents make and figured I can do it, and had a really successful first 6 months, decided to start a team, built a team of 15 people with the Pate Realty Group. We reached out all over central North Carolina. We were doing big numbers. We were doing, $1.5 million or so of gross commission income every year, but I was netting a lot less than I should have been. And so I kind of let the team dissipate on its own, if you will, through attrition, and basically went solo in the middle of 2019. One buyer agent that stuck with me, Donna, stuck with me for a while. She was fantastic. And I was trying to push her to be out on her own because that was the best thing for her. And I've been solo ever since. I've gotten to the point where I'm really more of a lead receiver than a lead generator. So if you're looking for somebody that hits the phones at 8 a.m. every morning on the dialer, that is not me. I do a lot of my business through interactions with people. I love shaking hands. I'm very old school. Dad has always said that I'm an old soul. The rest, as they say, is history. So I sold my DJ company in 2015 and focused just on real estate, the investment properties that we have, and some of the portfolios that I manage for people, and doing that, teaching regulatory classes here in North Carolina, teaching training for people all over the Southeast, coaching programs, et cetera. So I'm still in the business. I still list and sell every day, but I also am trying to pass my knowledge on to the next generation.
Right. Yeah. So good. You're a great guest to have on then, because you're going to have good answers to these questions, and people are going to get a lot
Don't
out of
make
it
the
then.
expectation too high on me, Rich. You don't want
Oh,
to.
yeah. No, it's high. It's off the
I'll do
charts.
my best.
Okay, well, so you kind of answered this question. So maybe, since you're not going about getting leads the way a lot of people do, maybe answer it from a different perspective of when you were a newer agent. The question was, what's your number one source for high quality leads right now, and how has that changed over the past few years? So maybe let's say, yeah, how
Yeah.
did it grow over the course of your career to now being like, don't have to look for them?
Absolutely. So the best thing I can tell somebody that's new in the business, especially, is you got to have a database. If you don't have a database, you're not in business. And for me, the database, when I started, it was Lotus 123. Now it would be Excel. So for those of you that are dinosaurs, raise your hand if you're able, type of thing. But that's where my database started, and I built it by hosting open houses. I hosted 5 open houses a weekend in my market to meet people. So I would do one location from 10 to 12 on Saturday morning. I would do the second location from 1 to 3, and a third location from 4 to 6. So it was basically an 8-hour day of open houses, but because I was in different areas, I would capture different leads. People and with the changes in the NAR settlement that have taken place over the last year and the way people are changing the way they do business again, we're seeing this happen again, where open houses are extremely valuable. I hosted an open house 2 weeks ago at a new listing, and we had 7 people through. We had 3 people that were unattached to agents, so they were able to get into our database. We're starting to work with them. One of them is actually an investor. One of them is buying for their parents. They need a multi-generational home, and then we've got a new first-time buyer that's also in there that we're showing houses to. So you get the myriad when you do different open houses at different areas. And open houses are hot again because people don't want to meet a real estate agent and in the first 5 minutes get told, well, you need to sign something. And, it's kind of like going on a date and asking someone to marry you before you order your water. It's just not going to work. And so the consumer is uncomfortable with that. I'm not sure that it's in the settlement itself was the best thing overall for consumers, but we've had to alter the way we do business with that. And part of that is the lead generation. You have the new rules with the do not call list and the do not email list and the do not fax list. And although those are being held up right now by the Department of Justice and the Trump administration with a few adjustments, the rules are still in place. So you have to be careful about, just dialing for dollars with a multi-line dialer. And I'm not saying that those aren't valuable in some cases, but I would say they're more valuable when you upload your database into it and can make those phone calls, because that's going to be a closure rate of somewhere around 6% versus a cold call that's going to be a half of 1% closure ratio with the opportunities. Ultimately, the reason that we're having conversations, the reason that we're interacting with people is to get a face-to-face appointment. Because until somebody meets, if I get you face to face, if I get a potential buyer or seller face to face, I've got an 80% closure rate on that with them working with me. And so that's how you build the pipeline. And unfortunately, a lot of companies are teaching this: find someone that's ready to buy or sell a home in the next 60 to 90 days. That's not necessarily the long-term solution. If you need that in place so you can survive for that next 90 to 120 days, but you need to be talking to people that are going to think about buying in summer of 2026 or selling in summer of 2026, because that's where the pipeline grows. It's a lot easier to build a long-term pipeline than a short-term pipeline. The open house will do both. It gives you if you're using your open houses right, you're advertising to the neighbors and you're getting sellers in there that are looking to see how you're marketing that other home or how you're presenting yourself. And that's not done very often. Most of the time we think of an open house as looking for buyers. The open house is just as valuable for other sellers in the community when they come to see how you're marketing the property.
Okay, yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Can you, for those that don't really know, the NAR settlement, can you just briefly explain what that is?
So the NAR settlement that happened that was agreed to, I believe it was March of 2024 that it was agreed to, and the settlement was finalized in November of 24. And it was basically a class action lawsuit against the National Association of Realtors and some of the large real estate companies that they had been conspiring to raise commissions by having the sellers pay exorbitant fees to be able to pay the buyer's agent. And the rationale is pretty simple. Imagine if you were suing someone and you hired your attorney and you paid your attorney $10,000 to represent you. And then the attorney says, okay, I need another $10,000 so that the buyer has an attorney to represent them. That's the rationale. So you're paying someone that is generally negotiating against you. The seller wants the highest price, buyer wants the lowest price. So the rationale was that we were driving up prices and colluding to do that. I'm not sure that that's exactly the case of what happened, but NAR decided to settle it because, in all honesty, it was cheaper to settle than it was to continue on and appeal it. Because in the state of Missouri, where the case was filed by Seitzer Burnett, you have to have 3 times the amount of the potential settlement put into escrow. Well, that was going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $5.5 billion that NAR just simply didn't have. And so they decided to settle it and try to work out ways to handle this. And so as a result, here in North Carolina, we have a rule with our real estate commission that we can show properties without having a buyer's agency agreement signed. So if you're a non-realtor in North Carolina, you can show property before you get any documentation signed other than the basic real estate disclosure of how we work with real estate agents and clients. But in North Carolina, we've had to adapt to that. So we now have to get some kind of an agency form signed by buyers. And again, that's like asking someone to marry you before you order the glass of water at the dinner table, as I said earlier.
Yeah.
So what we've developed is when I first meet a buyer and they want to see a house, they sign a buyer's agency agreement with me, but it's for 1 week instead of, a 4 or 5 month relationship, so that they have the opportunity. If they don't, there's going to be some people that like me, some people that don't. And if they don't want to work with me, I'm not going to pin them down to working with me. So that's where it's affected our business. Different states all have different rules. You have transactional brokerage down in Florida where the agent doesn't necessarily have to represent someone. They're just there to perform the tasks of the transaction management, and the attorneys are taking care of all the legal stuff because you got a buyer side attorney and a seller side attorney. So it's different effect in every state. Here in North Carolina, we've always recommended that you get a buyer's agency relationship agreed to up front, but now we have to have that. And we've got 3 different forms to do that. And it's kind of a mess at the moment, but people are beginning to adapt to it so that it's not quite so complicated for the consumer.
Okay. Um, can you walk us through your most successful marketing strategy that doesn't involve like paid advertising or
I,
now resting on your laurels, respectfully?
Yeah. So my favorite ad that we ever placed, and I wish I'd have thought about it. I'd have sent you a copy of it so you could have popped it up on a share screen. But it is an ad for the 2000 during the 2016 presidential election. And we had a horrible picture of Hillary Clinton on one side where she's yelling and screaming and pointing her finger. And then Donald Trump was on the other side. He was yelling and screaming and pointing their finger. And, this was when a lot of people had threatened to move to Canada if either one of them won. And so we put an ad on the back of our pickup truck that we had, and it said, "Are you thinking of moving to Canada? Call us, we can help." And it had a QR code to one of our pages where people could ask questions. And somebody took a picture of that in downtown Raleigh and they posted it to the Good Morning America Facebook page. And we ended up, somebody tagged us in the photo, and my phone sounded like a machine gun or a pinball machine going off for the next 3 days because we had over 1 million likes and something like 100,000 shares. The year after that, just because of the awareness of it and making people laugh at something, because this is a world we got enough problems to argue about. We got to laugh sometimes. And being able to bring that, I think, brought us a lot of business. And we had one of our biggest years ever. I think we sold about $50 million worth of real estate in the following year after that, to the point where we started looking for other ways to create viral opportunities, because the wrap on the back of that pickup truck was not but about $200 to do, and the return on it was massive. But from today's standpoint, I use a lot of AI to develop Instagram posts, social media posts, like a lot of realtors do. And so that is something that I'm using it more often for, and we're seeing some return on some of those. If you remember the Olympics last year, there were photos of Snoop Dogg floating around, and I had a ad with Snoop Dogg with his sunglasses with a surprised look on his face, and the caption underneath it said, "You listed your house for sale and you didn't even talk to Brian Pate." Viral things like that happen, and you can get, in this world, likes turn into money and opportunity. And so something as simple as putting your idea into a GPT system of some kind and saying, "Help me come up with a humorous way to ask this." And it can kick it back out sometimes. Sometimes I use it, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I write it on my own. It just really depends. And if you hear a great line on, I can take a great line from Twitter that somebody's posted that I think is funny. I can turn it into a meme with a simple photo, and I can upload that and create a graphic, etc. It's all ready to go in a matter of minutes. And you put it out there and you don't even think about it.
That's a good point. Yeah, you have to like free, it could be considered free advertising. but you also need to have that creativity to do it. Because not all AI generated material is great. It's getting better, a lot better.
Absolutely. Well, and what you have to keep in mind is that AI is an assistant. It's not there to do your job for you. But if I've got enough information loaded into my GPT system that if I say, write a 1 minute roast of Brian Pate, it'll come up with some great jokes that I didn't even think about. Um, well, a lot of my students give me a hard time because I talk about doing business before the internet existed and back in the day. So they always have their old jokes and things like that. So I had one student that I was teaching an AI class. And I said, I put everybody into breakout sessions on Zoom. And I said, now you guys go use AI to write something, whether it's an ad, whatever it may be. Dude came back and he said he had prompted it with write 3 jokes about Brian Pate, real estate agent in Wake Forest, North Carolina. And it came back and had actually 3 pretty funny jokes. One of them was that he was looking through my desk and found a stagecoach ticket. So little things like that, it's kind of fun. And people just don't realize how massive the AI boom is going to be, because if you're not using it, you're going to be out of business in the next 3 years in the real estate business, the sales business, the small business. If you're not learning how to use it and you're just using, oh, it's technology and I'm afraid of learning it. If you're going in with that attitude, you're really crucifying yourself, unfortunately.
Yeah, and shameless self plug here for the reply AI is that's kind of what I do is I help agents and brokerages that haven't adopted it or haven't adopted it well to get it dialed in and get it working, so that because it gives you time back.
Yeah, it's made my weekly hours of work is probably somewhere between 18 and 20 these days versus the 25 or 26 it was a year ago, but simply because I've adapted to AI. Using it with you can do everything from organizing your calendar to organizing your email. It can go ahead and find the mass email blasts that are out there and move it into the spam folder without me ever seeing it. There are huge benefits like that to it. And it's time is the most valuable asset we have, especially as a one-man operation. I mean, I'm a one guy. When you call the number on the sign, it's my cell phone. Unfortunately, with all this, the best AI that I could find right now would be an AI that answers my phone and plays loud noises towards all of the other AI software that's spamming me right now, because I probably get somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 to 30 calls a day. So I'd love to be able to eliminate that. But because I'm a business owner, I have to answer that call. I never know when it's a lead on the other end of the line. And so whenever you answer, of course, those spam callers know that we now have a usable number that somebody's answering. So they sell that number to other people and it just grows and grows and grows. And I've had my phone number now for 30 years. So I'm not about to change phone numbers.
Yeah, yeah, throwing away gold.
Absolutely.
What's one common belief about real estate success that you're found to be completely wrong?
I had someone that told me early on in my career, you real estate agents don't do anything but eat lunch, drive around looking at pretty houses, make 6% and drive a Mercedes. And I'm sitting here looking at myself going, I'm driving a 1991 Ford Thunderbird and I didn't eat last night because I haven't had a paycheck come in a while. There's this vision to the real estate business that it's so glamorous. And I don't think people realize how tough it is. And that's why we're always looking for the opportunities to make the job easier, whether it's a virtual assistant to help keep you organized. The top agents that are great salespeople are not top organizers. They're not the ones keeping the file in order, making sure that everything's documented. That's just not the nature of, if you're familiar with the DISC profile, a high D person that's a very aggressive, fast paced operation. So I think that what the public sees in real estate agents on TV with HGTV and these millionaire, selling the West Coast or selling Sunset and all these TV shows, it's nothing like that. That is made for TV. When you're watching a buyer on HGTV and they walk in the door and she says, yeah, I'm a receptionist at a suntan place and he's a busboy at a local restaurant. Our budget's 1.2 million. Come on. Let's be real. And they don't show you the sitting down with the consumer that, they've $1,500 a month in childcare costs, and they have a car payment of $700 because they needed a new van a couple of years ago. And all of those affect their buying capabilities. It affects their debt to income ratio on the backside. People don't see all of that work that goes into it. They don't see that when there's a problem in the transaction and the agent's sitting up at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night trying to figure out solutions to it because they can't sleep. And then they fall asleep finally, they wake up 5 hours later, and that's all the sleep they got. And now they're trying to figure out how to handle everything on short sleep times. And the brain is just not wired to be as sharp as it is when it's not getting its sleep. People don't see that. People don't understand that those of us that work with buyers that are truly trying to protect the buyer in what will be the single largest investment that most of them make in their entire lives, we're worried about making sure that there's nothing wrong with that house. So we suggest a radon test, and they say, well, I don't want to do that because that's another $150 that it's going to cost me. Well, that $150 could cause your child to have lung cancer down the road if the radon's present. How much is that going to cost you? They think we're saying that trying to sell people, and we're just trying to give them the information and educate them on what they need to know for them to make an informed decision. And that's the toughest part of the business for me is if you don't trust me, we don't need to work together. If you don't believe that I have your best interest at heart, we don't need to be working together. Now, are there a lot of agents that are turn and burn and they're all about handle the transaction and chase the check? Yeah. If that's what you're looking for, I'm not your guy. I've got a very small network that delivers. And to be honest with you, when I get a referral from my database, I'm typically not competing against anybody. And I also have a lot of transactions where I'm the second realtor because they already had a bad experience. And now I come in and with systems in place, with the plan, here's the marketing plan. Here's how you're playing a part in the marketing plan. Here's what we're going to do, when we're going to do, and why we're going to do it. And you explain that to them. And now they go, the other agent never said anything like that. They just came in here with a couple of sheets of paper and says, here's what's sold in your neighborhood. Here's what I think you should list it at. That's not the way that the business is done. It's, hey, let me show you all the data points that you need to be aware of. Here's what's sold in the past 6 months. That's indication of past value. Here's what's pending right now. That's what's indication of current value. And here's what's active right now. That's what's indicative of future value. And when the closed stuff is higher than the active stuff, all of a sudden there's a red flag up and you've got to figure out how to explain to the client, hey, you're this pocket of this area is in a depreciating market. Your value is going down by 0.75% per month rather than up by 0.5% a month, like you're hearing on the news media and how other agents are promoting it. The hyper local data is such an important piece. And again, I'm not trying to shameless plug with your company, but again, AI can help us recognize all of those data points. I've used one of the things that I used AI for is I uploaded my database into the system. It has the year that they bought the house, the month that they bought the house, how old their kids are. It identifies if a kid's graduating from high school in May, I'm already talking to them because they may be looking at an empty nest type situation where they want to sell this house and buy down to something smaller. If somebody's going to have a baby, that's an identifier. And AI helps me identify the probability of sale, and it ranks all of my clients to do so. It's the technology is there to do things that would have taken an entire office. The Tom Ferrys of the world and the Brian Buffinis of the world and the Tony Robbins of the world used to spend millions of dollars a year paying people to do this. And now a small guy like me can use AI to get the exact same output.
Yeah, in a fraction of the time too. And
Absolutely.
cost.
Absolutely.
How do you, kind of on that topic, how do you structure your typical workday to maximize your productivity while maintaining work-life balance?
Well, unfortunately for my wife, I usually get up between 4:30 and 5 in the morning. She usually gets up around 5:45 so she can go for her 4-mile walk. I do not go for a walk. I'm the son of a newspaper publisher, and my family is 5 generations deep in the newspaper business. And so I do a lot of news reading. All of the articles that are emailed to other real estate agents that they just delete, I read them. I read a synopsis from the Wall Street Journal, Forbes magazine, CNN, the New York Times, the LA Times, the Atlanta Journal Constitution. I'm reading newspapers first thing in the morning. Typically the day starts with pouring a glass of Mountain Dew or opening a bottle of Mountain Dew. I'm not the healthiest guy in the world, but my Mountain Dew is my coffee. I don't drink coffee. So I sit here for about an hour reading articles in the mornings. I clear all the crud out of my email while I'm on the iPad reading, and I get that done. I get dressed, get up, get changed. I'm usually in my office no later than 7:30. Now my commute's very easy because it's 16 steps from my master bedroom to my office upstairs. I work out of my home. I do not have some big office. We do that partially for tax benefits because I use it 40 hours a week. I can write off part of my office on my expenses with our mortgage payment. So, and then usually by 8 o'clock, if I have a birthday time, so if somebody's having a birthday, wedding anniversary, or there's a milestone, a client that bought their house 5 years ago today, I don't just send them a text or comment on Facebook. I'll actually record them a video of me. It can be anything from me singing a very horrible off key version of Happy Birthday. It can be me just saying, "Hey, I'm thinking about you today, Rich. I know that today's a big day for you. Good luck with that job interview." Or, do you realize that 10 years ago today, you actually closed on your home? How's the house? And it always ends with a question. You have to end any communication with a client. You always have to end with the next step to give them. Otherwise, it's just kind of an awkward pause. So, I always ask, how's the house? Is there anything you need done? Anybody that I can connect you with? Because I've found that rather being a lead generator, by being a connector, I can help people more. Because the joke in town is, well, Brian's got a guy for that. And so that's who I want to be. When somebody says, "Hey, we've got $1,000 that we want to donate to a charity, who can you recommend?" I'm the one with the list of charities. So what are your favorite things to contribute to? I think being that guy in a community, and I'm very fortunate. The community where I live, I'm in the town of Wake Forest, North Carolina, where Wake Forest University used to be before it was moved to Winston-Salem in 1956. And so when I moved here in 98, there were only about 7,200 residents. Well, today we have 62,000 residents. And with that, we probably have about 250 real estate agents, where I was one of about 10 back when I first moved here. So part of it is me meeting new people, and part of it is reconnecting with the people that have been here forever. So, at this point, after being here for almost 30 years, people refer to me as a native Wake or a semi-native Wake Forester. But the goal is always to continue to expand the reach, because the people that I've known for 30 years, they're not moving. The only way they're moving is in a pine box and going to the funeral home. So I want to be there for their next generation, for their kids, because when a parent dies and leaves an estate like that, they need help, because a lot of people don't understand that probate process in North Carolina. You got to know that it's 120 days from the filing, and who all can file for requests on the debtor, et cetera. And then you can put the house on the market and get it marketed and get it under contract, have the executor sign off on everything, then the family gets their money. It's a process. And it, unfortunately, in a death, it's probably the most difficult transaction, because you're dealing with a legacy and an emotional side that may not necessarily be in such play on the purchase side when you're representing a buyer or somebody that's relocating because of a job, because there's some excitement there. They're anticipating that new place. Whereas, bereavement is a whole different ballgame, and you have to understand the disciplines of how different those are.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, so right now you don't really need to worry about this so much, but so for this question, maybe think about before you have the notoriety. What's been your most effective strategy for standing out in a crowded market?
market knowledge and knowing what's going on. And it's still true today. This is something that I really drive myself on. I see agents that are marketing themselves. You can't market yourself as an expert in investment properties if you don't know what depreciation recapture tax is. You can't market yourself as a historic home property or a historic home specialist if you don't know what the Capital Area Preservation Association is and know what the easement applies on the house. You don't need to know what it means when the house is on the National Register of Historic Places and things like that. So I get very frustrated with that. But knowing the information about what's going on. I'm the chairman of our government affairs committee at the Wake Forest Chamber, and I'm a former town commissioner here. So I am connected and I always want to know what's going on. The only people that know what's going on before me is typically the contact points that I have, whether it be the town manager, economic development manager, and a couple of the downtown business owners and things like that. I typically know about that before other real estate agents do. And one of my goals is to make sure that they all know about those things. For example, here in Wake Forest, our community is built on top of 700-ton pieces of granite, which means that we have more radon in our area than most other areas in the state until you get to the mountains. And so you better be doing a radon test if you're buying a home here in Wake Forest. Little things like that and having that knowledge are keys. One of the things we talked about, we referred to the NAR settlement earlier, but when you look at it, how do you distinguish yourself from a sea of real estate licensees? And the answer is market knowledge. If you want to create value, when a buyer calls me and says, hey, I want to see the house at 123 Happy Hollow Lane, and I look it up and I get all of my information downloaded, I review it for maybe an hour. I go over, I meet them at the house, we sign all the paperwork, they go in, and they've gotten so further deep into that one property because it's the only one they're looking at. I'm looking at 15 different properties for 10 different potential buyers today. And so I haven't had the time to focus on it the way that laser focus, they spent the last 8 hours looking at it. I spent maybe an hour. They're obviously going to have more info. My job is to bring something to the table that they don't know about. So if they're looking in Wake Forest and they're new to the area, they may not know about that radon issue. They may not know about the S-Line high-speed rail that's going to be built through Wake Forest in the next 10 years. They may not know that Capitol Boulevard is being studied for a toll road right now because it's not out in the public as much. So little things like that you can keep up with. And something as simple as, if you're going to be sitting around doing nothing in an evening, go sit at a planning board meeting for your local municipality. Go sit in the town council or the city council meeting or the town commissioner meeting and listen to what they're talking about. Keep up with the development. One of the greatest things that I have is that I keep up with every time there is a rezoning. I've got a website that I go to where we've got someone that keeps track of it very well in our community. So I can see what people's discussion is. And now I can come to the table and say, well, here's the good, here's the bad, here's the ugly of this possibility or of this development. And so that's where you have to constantly be in earnest to educate yourself constantly. If you get to the point where you're not learning in the real estate business, you're dying. Your business is dying.
Always be closing, always be learning.
ABC. Yep, absolutely. Well, and the worst thing that you can do as an experienced agent is to either think you know it all or to begin your sentence with, I've been in the business for 20 years and ... That's just an excuse for a massive pile of BS getting ready to come out of your mouth. Yeah. And the younger agents look at it as extremely condescending and pompous. And it's an egotistical statement that nobody but you cares about. So the client doesn't care how long I've been in the business. They don't care how many homes I've sold. They don't care how many total transaction I've had in my career. They want to know, what's he going to do for me? Focus on people. Ultimately, if you focus on people, the money will take care of itself.
Can you share a major mistake that you made early in your career and what you learned from it?
Yeah, throwing money at leads, paying for leads. I tried Realtor.com. I think it was 1996 that Realtor.com became available. And because the Wake Forest zip code, we're the 27587 zip code, and because we had so few homes, I think my cost for the the zip code at that time was around $37 a month, because nobody was moving out of it. Everybody that was doing that was moving in. We had a new neighborhood called Tyler Run that was being built, and that was the first time a truly new neighborhood had been built in about 10 years. So I paid for that, and I got a lead out of it that I actually closed. It was one of the very first leads that I got from online lead sources that I paid for. I haven't had one since. And I've paid Zillow. I've paid, the problem with paid leads is, yes, it may work for you right now, but if that company gets sold or if it goes public, if a new CEO comes in, it's going to be managed differently. And the first thing that's going to change is their revenue streams. So they're either going to have to go up on their costs, they're going to have to provide something new. But what they do is they get you roped in. They start out, okay, we're selling you leads and you're paying a 35 or 45% referral fee when it closes. Okay, great. So I'm paying $700 a month for a zip code and 45% of whatever the compensation is. That's great. What happens when they say, you know what, the cost for the zip code's going up to 1,000, but in exchange, we're going to get you a contact management system where you can use our systems to put your leads in. Well, as soon as you put your leads in there, guess what? They're going to take it. They're going to wash it. They're going to find the companies that are, they're going to use their AI to determine the most likely seller. And they're going to communicate with them, say, hey, would you like a Zillow offer on your property without ever having to go to the market? And now I've just given them my database contact information to use against me and take my business away. I'm blown away how many agents do that. Now, what's not right for me is right for others. And I'm well aware that there are a lot of agents. I got 3 agents that are in my market that are spending in excess of $20,000 a month on Zillow. They're top producing teams, but they spend most of their time dialing for dollars from those leads that come in. They have their systems in place because there's a lot of people that teach systems to communicate with them, the Tristan Armudas and people like that know how to handle those. But ultimately, you got to have a team of 30 people in order to handle that large of a lead volume. And unfortunately, the closure rate's not but around 1.5 to 2%, even if your systems are perfect. Whereas if I get a call today, I get one phone call this month, I'm probably listing the house. So I spend my entire week looking for that 1 or 2 phone calls that are going to turn into a piece of business. And in the meantime, my goal is to help people out. Let me connect you with this guy. Who do you know that can fix my truck? Okay, here's 2 guys that can help you. This guy's more of a higher end stuff. This guy's the work from home and can get it done in his garage for you over the weekend. Which one do you want? I think that's where our business is going. I think that people are tired of the sales job. They're tired of dealing with a real estate transaction that feels like a car transaction. And I think the public is tired of the salesy stuff. If you were if it wasn't for this, I'd purchase a home. Well, because I don't freaking need a new one right now. The average person's staying in their home for 10 to 12 years these days instead of the 5 to 7 that it was before COVID. I don't blame them for that, especially if you're one of those people with a sub 4% interest rate on your house, which is more than 50% of the country right now.
Hey.
What they forget is those same people that are bragging about their sub 4% interest rate on their mortgage doesn't realize that they have a credit card that's got $15,000 worth of debt, and that's at 22 or 23%. So what you're saving in mortgage, you're actually spending with the credit card companies. So it all balances out. Ultimately, good real estate agents have to understand the path of money in order to understand how wealth is grown, because we make money when people make money. When the seller feels like they've got enough equity where they can afford to buy the next house, that's when they'll sell. When the buyer feels like they're finally making enough income that they can outsave appreciation, so they have a little cash in their hands, that's when they'll make the move and buy. If we've got the financing options to get, here in North Carolina, we use a lot of USDA loans because of the rural areas outside of the suburban areas. But we have the ability to do 100% financing. That's probably a 6.25 to 6.5% rate as of today, and be able to get them into the house for very little cash. Now their payment's going to be higher, but that's what people are buying on. Can I afford the payment? Again, unfortunately, a lot of new construction is selling on the payment. They're saying, let's drive up the price of the house by $20,000 so we can do a buy down on the rate to 4.99%. That way, if they're looking at a resale home at $500,000 that's at 6.25 or 6.5% versus a new construction home that's at 4.9%, they can buy a $20,000 more expensive new construction home so they can pay for that premium and still get into the house for the same payment. And now they get to pick their colors, they get to pick their flooring, and they probably don't have to do any major system remodels or system reevaluations for at least 3 to 5 years. It's just the way of the market, and it's the way that we're going in it. So I think that the consumer's biggest mistake that they make is they sit here and say, well, what's the payment? The best question the consumer can ask is, what's the cost? Because you can fit, if you know what you're paying for it. If I'm paying $50,000 for a car and I have $50,000 cash, putting that cash into that car may not be the best deal. I may be better off putting that cash into a money market that's making me 5% a year, or a 5% interest rate a year, and using the loan at the car dealership for 0.9% financing on this new automobile. I'm making 4% if I'm able to do it that way. And so a lot of people don't think that way. So it's our job as licensees and as real estate agents to show those creative financing opportunities, to make sure that the buyer understands and the seller understands the path of money, because that's where the wealth is grown with real estate.
What's one tool or system in your business that you couldn't live without, and why?
Boy, one system I couldn't use. Well, obviously I couldn't live without my cell phone. I had to get a new cell phone about a year and a half ago, and I was dead in the water. So I have a couple, my biggest tool for my business is my Excel spreadsheets. I use the Excel spreadsheet for everything from tracking statistical data in the area with real estate transactions, average and median sale price. I use an AI called Data Wrapper. I know that a lot of people use that. Data Wrapper is able to take a lot of detailed numbers from the spreadsheet and analyze things. And what I will do is I will put something into Data Wrapper in order to create the format, and then upload that into AI and say, economics, a professional economist and analyzing numbers in the real estate market in the Triangle region of North Carolina, identify data points in this chart that show movement, positive or negative, in the real estate market, and expand on that topic. Boom. It's amazing what the AI will kick out if you know how to use it. And again, I use a lot of different AI. I've used Opus Clip for video for both my YouTube channel and for my reels that I post on social media. I almost have to look at the list here of everything that we have. Use Reach for text, group, and email. I use InVideo. I've used Suno before. I've used Promptimize. I've used Quadratic for data analysis. That's another great one. I use Spinach AI with my Zoom meetings. So my first meeting almost always with a client is now on Zoom. Spinach AI enables me to get the notes from that. I've used Tome before. I've used Expression Camera. And then thanks to you, I've found the Riverside podcasting piece. So that's a really cool piece and some of the functions that it's got. So I'm using AI a ton. For language models, I'm using Perplexity. And
I love
so that's a
Perplexity.
good one. I'm not sure if they're really going to buy TikTok or not. We'll see if that happens. I know it's being discussed.
Interesting.
And I look at a lot of the Bernard Marr stuff, tracking all of the different AIs that come out. And when I see something that strikes my fancy, I'll take a look at it. But the way I do it, I think the biggest fear for people with AI is, oh my God, I have to learn another new system. And I'm a believer in the 100-hour rule. The 100-hour rule says that if you spend 100 hours in any given calendar year learning something new, that you will be smarter at it than 95% of the people that are out there. And if you take that and you divide that 100 hours by 365 days, you're looking at about 17 to 18 minutes a day studying something. So if I find something new, I'll log on to it. I'll check it out. I'll go through the free trial and everything. And if I like it, I'll set aside and time block 20 minutes a day to open it up, study it, see how it works, play with a little bit. Because I'm the guy, if you ask me to read instructions to put a piece of furniture together, I'm not doing it. It may end up with 3 legs here and 2 arms there, but I'm not an instruction reader. I'm a guy that goes through and I learn by doing. I'm very kinesthetic with my learning. And so I will literally sit there and play with it for 17 to 20 minutes a day and get better at it. And after a month of looking at it, if it's still got my attention, I'll continue to grow. But a lot of times it'll go by the wayside at that point. I'll cancel the subscription to it, and I'm only 30 days in. So it's not costing me significant amounts. But, I have money in my budget for my business set aside. It's about $300 a month to try new stuff. I've got my website that I pay for. I pay about $139 a month for my website, my blog, and all of that stuff. I've got my OpenAI subscription like everybody does. I do the $20 a month. That's all. And a lot of my APIs that I'm using are in there and running that. But the trying of new stuff, and I've tried everything from apps that go on your phone. I prefer desktop apps when I'm working in AI because I've got multiple screens in front of me. I'm very fast with the mouse and I have very fat old fingers. So it's not as fast when I'm on the phone and I'm better at it there. I think a lot of it is just simply being willing to try new things. And once you find them, practice. It's not, practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. And in order to get to the point where you're perfect, you have to work on it a lot. As I tell students in my classes, if you've never done a video before, one of the best things you can do for your social media presence is to record your first video in front of a listing and say, I'm here at my new listing at 123 Happy Hollow Lane. Invariably, somebody in that class will go, well, Brian, I don't like the way I look on video and I don't like the way I sound on video. And my response is, well, you have a really big problem then, because that's the way you look and that's the way you sound. So get over it, come with what God gave you and be the best you can, because the first time you do anything, it's going to suck. It's that simple. The first time you do anything, it's going to suck. Why do we get better at it? Because we practice at it. We get it to the point where it's just systematic, and I liken it to getting ready in the morning. Everybody brushes their teeth without thinking, oh, I've got to move my hand in small circles and I've got to brush down. We don't think that way. We just do it because it's so programmed into us. And in order to, Gary Keller from Keller Williams has always said it takes 30 days to establish or 66 days to establish a habit. Most people fail within the first 3 or 4 days. If people that say, I'm ready to lose weight, I'm going to walk every day for the next 30 days. By the 4th day, they've stopped. They've forgotten they ever made that commitment to themselves. If you really want to do that, you have to time block it. And in my coaching, one of the things that we talk about with agents all the time, let me see your calendar. Because if you show me your calendar, I know what your priorities are. Because if you're telling me you want to lose 20 pounds by June 1st so that it's bikini season and you're ready, I better see a time block for at least 30 to 45 minutes every couple of days that you're going to the gym, you're walking, you're working out. And if that's not there, what you're telling me is not the same as what your mind is delivering to you.
Yeah, I like that. Okay. This is our last question here. What's one skill you think most real estate professionals overlook, but is crucial for long-term success?
Professional speaking in person, line, and on the phone. When I call a real estate agent, if you actually get somebody to answer, because if you called 50 real estate agents, you might get 3 that actually answer the phone when you call. Most of them will say, leave a message and call me back. But when I call another agent and they're like, no, Come on, you're a professional. You know, I don't expect, I've been trained with my radio voice and all of that. I've been trained in public speaking, so I get it. I'm probably not the guy that can look at others. But if you talk and sound like you're not very bright, that's going to affect whether people are willing to work with you. It's no different than the car sales guy wearing the plaid coat that comes out to you. Hey, what do I have to do to put you in a car today? They've rehearsed that. Comedians and performers, actors rehearse that. So you have to rehearse your listing presentation. You have to rehearse your buyer consultation. You have to rehearse all of the scripts and the objection handling techniques that you use. And if you don't ever rehearse them and you say, I'll just fly by the seat of my pants, you're going to lose to a guy like me that practices in front of the mirror constantly. And that's the biggest mistake that professionals make. And by the way, I'm not just talking about real estate. I'm talking about in anything. Because if you're out of your home, you are either selling or you are being sold every single day. If you're in the car and you're wanting to merge into a lane, you're either selling by signaling that you're getting ready to move there and the guy behind you is slowing down, or the guy behind you is speeding up to block you so that you have to go in behind them. You're either selling or being sold at all times every day. And you have to appear that you are at least professional, and I'm the worst for this. You really should watch your language. I grew up in the nightclub business in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, so I don't have the cleanest of mouths. But I think when you're in a professional environment, you need to be able to turn it on. But in this day and age, though, somebody's always watching you. And more than likely, you're on video somewhere if you're at some kind of event, because there's always someone in the background that's got their phone up like this and they're posing for a photo or they got a video going. You're going to be in photos constantly. You better present the right way in front of people. I'm not saying be two-faced at all, because I am what I am. I have people that don't like me, and I learned as an elected official, there's nothing wrong with that, because if you don't like me, that's fine. At least I know where I stand. But can we still be cordial to each other so I can say hello, how you doing, how's the family, things like that? You may hate my guts, but I'm still going to give a darn about you. And being able to do that and truly show people that you care is where the value is. And there are some people that just because I disagree with them, they think I don't care. I heard you. I heard your argument. I heard what you said. I just don't agree with your what you've come up with as your final answer. And that's okay. But we've lost the art of, and it's started with politics and it's working its way down these days. We've lost the art of communication face to face. The Gen Z has been brought up with a phone in their hand. All of the things that I had when I was growing up in high school, I had a jam box, I had cassette tapes, I had CDs, I had a phone, I had an alarm clock. All of that stuff is right here now. So it's easier. I mean, we've got 4 kids that are all between the ages of 20 and 25 between me and my wife. We're a Brady Bunch blended marriage. But when our kids are together, they'll literally sit in the same room and text each other memes and photos and make comments they'll have a conversation. And sometimes I just want to grab the phone and say, put them down. Let's talk. And I'm just as guilty because I'm distracted by my phone each and every day. But ultimately, we got to be able to communicate, because if you're face to face with somebody and you don't look and sound professional, you're not going to get that business. There are going to be some that'll continue to work with you, but there's going to be somebody that you don't know that they judged you based on how you spoke and how you appeared when you got there. And God forbid you're late. I hate it when people are late. If we have a meeting scheduled for 3:00, I grew up at the back gate of the Myrtle Beach Air Force Base with a whole bunch of military kids. And I learned in that school, if you weren't in your seat when the bell rung, the teachers would let you hear it. Early is on time. On time is late, and late is not acceptable. Mildred Shuford used to say that. She was my English teacher my senior year of high school. And if she said that once, she said it 1,000 times every time somebody walked in late. It's just respectful. And I think those are 2 things, the being respectful to others and learning how to speak professionally and to enunciate and not mumble and look people in the eye. I think that matters.
Well, thank you so much, Brian. I feel like this is like been a little mini masterclass in real estate and sales and lifing. So I really appreciate you taking the time right after coming off teaching a course,
Not a
squeezing this
problem at
in.
all. I'm
So
glad to be here.
yeah, thank you so much.
Absolutely.